Hey guys, it's Rodney, and for today's plant rant, we are talking about echeverias. Echeverias are a fun, small, or contained succulent that look like small agaves or small yuccas. They are in the succulent family, meaning that they are going to like a nice, well-draining soil. So for today's soil mix, we're going to talk a little bit about having a cacti succulent soil. In this soil, we're going to use a standard potting soil as a base. We've got our expanded shale, our perlites, and some of those clay balls or those leca balls in here to help with that added drainage. Now, what's really great about an echeveria, and most succulents to be honest, is they don't have a really hefty or large root system. So as you can see here, they can survive in pretty small pots, meaning they don't need a whole lot of soil space to get this beautiful growth. And because they are a succulent, they are going to want some really bright indirect light. Now in some areas, they can handle a few hours of morning sun, and that's where you're going to see a little bit more intensity in the color in the foliage itself. They can be grown indoors, but when they're indoors, you are going to notice kind of a looser growth habit, as well as your colors kind of fading or dulling out on you, so do be careful of that. And as we've talked about before, succulents hold most of their water in their foliage, so it is really easy to get sunburn on these guys. So if you've got too much bright afternoon sun or too much direct sun through a window, you are going to notice some burning on the foliage itself, which can cause harm or damage to the plant in the long term. Echeverias also really want to dry out before you water them again, so definitely pay attention to your watering requirements. Typically, these guys are only getting watered about once a week, even in these small containers, which means that they are able to thoroughly dry out from the top to the bottom before I water them again. One important thing about too wet of soil with succulents is that you're going to quickly get root rot issues. You're going to notice that by rotting out in the center of the plant first, and your foliage is going to start to get really kind of squishy, and it's going to kind of stink a little bit. Underwatering on a succulent is going to be similar to the jades that we've talked about recently, where you're going to notice some wrinkling in the foliage, almost like a wet fingertip that's been in water too long. That's usually a good sign that they're really ready for some water. Now, one thing to know about soil that dries out thoroughly between waterings is the soil can become what we call hydrophobic, which just means that the soil has a hard time absorbing the moisture prior to the plant getting to drink it. So sometimes with soil that gets too dry or is becoming hydrophobic, it's best to set it in something like a saucer or a dish and let it absorb the water from the bottom to the top to rehydrate that soil. That's going to ensure that the plant is able to get enough moisture to actually drink and rehydrate all of its foliage. And just like most of our cacti and succulents, the echeverias really do not require a lot of maintenance. Most of the time, you're just going to look for spent foliage like this lower growth here, where you can just kind of pluck out that older leaf or the dead and dying leaf to prevent any sort of rot or decay on the plant for the long term. Now, because succulents don't have a lot of feeding requirements doesn't mean that they don't need any fertilizer at all. So something that's really great for your succulents or your cacti is going to be something that can feed the roots really well. So we're going to be talking about liquid seaweeds as well as root stimulators. Now, most echeverias are going to be very similar in all of their growth habits and requirements. Though there are a wide range of varieties, most important to understand is that they're going to kind of grow in these low cluster or these rosettes in their shape. Now, different varieties of echeverias can have things like different bloom spike colors, which I'll show here on the screen, as well as different foliage colors. But most important is to understand that they're going to stay in these kind of low clusters. Some can get wider and a little bit denser in their growth. Some are going to stay a lot tighter and smaller and denser here, like this guy. Others can grow a little bit of height to them, but for the most part, they're all going to have a very similar rosette shape. This growth habit makes them really good for small container gardens like balconies or potted arrangements. They even look super cute in a pot just by themselves in a windowsill or on an outdoor dining table or coffee table. And just like a lot of other succulents, they're going to really contain a lot of their DNA in the foliage to help you propagate. So propagation can actually be a lot of fun with an echeveria. It's as simple as taking some of the lower foliage, and I say the lower foliage just to keep the aesthetics of the plant looking pretty, and you can pluck off some of these leaves. Now, as they grow, you're going to also notice some of the foliage falls off naturally, and that's totally okay, but you can use that to your advantage. By taking some of this lower foliage off and just kind of plucking it out of the plant, you can actually place this guy just on top of some soil and mist it a couple times a week to keep the soil around moist, and it will grow roots with a whole new rosette plant from the base here, and easy propagation. Now, once the roots start to form, you would want to get it into a little bit more soil, but remember, you don't want too much soil to your root ratio so that the soil doesn't stay too moist and cause your root rot issues. Another cool thing about the Echeveria with propagation is as they begin to grow, you'll also notice some what we call pups or babies growing around the base as a whole new plant. So they will kind of colonize in a space if they've got the room to do so. And as I mentioned earlier, they are really great for patios and potted arrangements, but their bloom spike is really what's the funnest. A lot of these varieties of Echeveria will shoot a bloom spike that's easily 10 to 12 inches tall with these beautiful little dainty flowers at the tips that'll range from mostly warm colors like reds and yellows and oranges. I'll put a few examples here on the screen for you to check out. If you want to add Echeverias to your plant collection, check out Milton's Plants. That's MILTONS plants.com to get your own today. If you guys are enjoying this content, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell icon as we're posting these plant rants weekly. We'll see you guys next time.